and welcome to the Energy Mixx Radio Show, the show where we highlight the ideas, innovation, and policies that keep America energized and moving forward. Today, we're taking a thoughtful look at U.S. energy policy and how it supports affordability, reliability, innovation, and America's leadership in a competitive global economy. Energy touches each and every part of our lives, from household budgets to job creation to even national security. And constructive uh, and constructive yeah, and constructive conversations help ensure smart outcomes. We'll also explore recent policy discussions in Washington, including proposals tied to carbon pricing and trade, and how those ideas fit within a broader goal of maintaining strong, affordable American energy. To help guide me through this conversation, we're being joined by a very respected voice in energy policy, and that is Tom Pyle, with the president of American Energy Alliance. I'm sorry. Tom Pyle, the president of American Energy Alliance. Tom, welcome back to the Energy Mixx Radio Show.
Great to be here. Good to see you again.
Tom, I think the last time you were on the show, we were formerly in another name, which was the Oil Patch Radio Show,
Yeah,
and we kind of broadened it. And so I'm excited to have you back so we can really dig into what your organization has been looking at in DC and kind of give us a federal level overlook of what's happening in DC and potentially a geopolitical. But first, allow me to introduce my listeners to you. You are nationally recognized as an energy policy expert with decades of experience working at the intersection of energy, economics, public policy, and under your leadership, the American Energy Alliance has focused on advancing policies that promote affordable energy, reliable energy for American families and businesses while strengthening U.S. energy security and global competitiveness. And your organization does work closely with policymakers, industry leaders, and consumer advocates, making you a valuable voice as we discuss the future of American energy. So I'm very happy to have you help me break down what's going on.
absolutely. Oh, there's not much happening.
Well, I want to start with I have a whole list of questions,
Yeah.
carbon tax and things you've been doing, this joint letter you wrote with 37 other organizations. But I'd like to kind of just get your opinion. There's something that's coming to the forefront right now that's trending, and I'd like your opinion on it. And that seems the revitalization of coal. It's just
Yeah.
popped out of nowhere. What's going on there? What's happening? Is it that we need more energy because of big data and AI? And I mean, why is coal coming back on? And is that a smart move in your opinion?
Yeah, it's a smart move. We shouldn't have backed away from coal from the beginning. A lot of the policies that in the early 2000s and going into, President Biden were all about decarbonization, right? Eliminate carbon emissions from the atmosphere and going after, it was a pretense in my view for going after coal, going after natural gas, going after oil. A lot of the green groups, the Sierra Clubs and NRDCs of the world have had billions of dollars in investments from folks like Michael Bloomberg and others to try to like just basically take our coal fleets off the board. And President Obama really kind of led the charge with that effort. He created a host of regulations, which ironically, just today, EPA Administrator Zeldin and President Trump are gonna take a run at the rescinding what's called the endangerment finding,
Mhm.
which is a fancy in past to basically misuse or to go above and beyond what the Clean Air Act said in terms of cleaning our air and going after carbon dioxide because and this ties also to the carbon tax discussion because Congress won't vote on it. They will not put votes on the floor of the House or the Senate to say, yeah, we want to tax carbon dioxide or we want to eliminate carbon dioxide. And so what they've done is use the force of the EPA and some other agencies to try to do that. Coal is, in 2007, it was 50% of our electricity mix.
Wow.
Today, it's about 19.
That's a hell of
Now,
a change in a very quick time.
very big. And you know who has doubled and doubled and doubled and doubled and doubled their coal generation since then?
China.
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 Um, this is about competitiveness It's about affordability, reliability. You've seen
National security.
100%. We have the most coal underneath our lands than any other nation in the world. And in areas like Montana, the Powder River Basin, it's the cleanest burning. And so what President Trump has done over the past year is issued what are called 202C orders through Secretary Wright at the Department of Energy. There are 38 coal plants that were scheduled to retire between the time President Trump was sworn into office and the time he leaves office. So far, the administration has issued 20 orders to different utilities saying, you shall not close that coal plant. And good thing he did. Look what happened in the big winter storm that we just had in the Northeast and throughout the Southeast and a lot of the country. We would have probably had a lot more deaths had those coal plants not been burning. And that's the fact. And so what President Trump has done more recently is said, okay, look, we're going to get away from providing our military institutions with this obscene, expensive power that doesn't really work all the time. And we're going to refocus on powering those installations with coal. And we're going to encourage, as part of our growing electricity demand, to have coal back in the mix. And I think it's a good idea. I think it's past its time.
Well, in the whole insane conversations were going on in the Biden administration, I remember reading an article and it made me wonder, like, yeah, how does that work? So we're going to now electrify our destroyers, our fleets of ships. And so how does that work? When are we supposed to pull over in some dock and fuel up? And I mean that in a very facetious way, but at the same time, it's like these some of these energy sources, they're not there yet. I'm not picking on them. I'm just saying the truth. They're not there yet to be that reliable where we cannot take off fuels like coal and natural gas that are the real reliable fuels that keep America and keep keep us alive. And also in saying that. So I'm kind of glad we walked off that ledge. But what do you say to the people who have just been kind of taught, and maybe even that there's been so much of an evolution in coal? Is that still
Absolutely
true?
true. Two things, two pieces of evidence. One, just look at the data. The actual pollutants that hurt us, the pollution levels have gone down to the point where they're almost de minimis in
We
this
can look at
country.
China's pollution rate.
Right. But the ironic thing is that to their credit, China is building new generation coal-fired power plants, supercritical, highly capable of reducing all of those sulfurs and all of those things that actually harm us. We in the United States don't build new coal plants. We have these weird laws at EPA that don't even allow us to retrofit or upgrade our existing coal fleet to include those new technologies and things, because it would trigger what's called a new source review. And what that would do is basically it would be the same as building a new plant, and it would be what we have with the problem we have with permitting in this country, where we couldn't actually do it. And so, like, we have the EPA who say, oh, well, we want to clean the air. And then we have companies that have the ability to do that with new plants, new modern plants, or upgrade existing coal plants. And they're not incentivized to do that either. So it really is a strategy to eliminate coal from the electricity generation fleet. And that's clearly a misguided policy.
Wow. Sounds like we have a lot of analysis paralysis problem on anywhere.
We have a lot of ideology problems. That's the big
Absolutely.
part of it. That's been driving a lot of this. And you see now, even in Europe, they're admitting that their policies are hurting their people, right?
Why can't we admit it? Our policies are hurting us too.
Absolutely. But the Biden administration, the Obama administration before that wanted to model their policies after Europe. And so this is the result in both cases.
Yeah. Well, Let's switch gears and talk a little bit about what you've been up to recently. The American Energy Alliance joined with 37 other like-minded organizations to formally alert Secretary Wright, Secretary of Energy, about concerns surrounding committee report language related to a potential carbon dioxide tax that you were talking about earlier. So why is this important for so many organizations to come together with this issue and try to signal? I mean, I get that you all have definitely gained attention, probably of Secretary Wright, and you're saying, we have this potential problem, but can you break it down for us as far as what is the issue that you guys are coming together and trying to alert Secretary Wright about?
Yeah, there's a small band of I call them the Republican carbon tax crowd, led by Senator Kramer of North Dakota, Senator uh, Curtis of Utah, and a couple others. And what they've been trying to do is conflate the issue of trade and trade policy and tariffs with carbon taxes. Europe has this thing called the carbon border adjustment mechanism. And what they're trying to do is say anything that comes into our country needs to have a sort of a certified CO2 emission tag on it. And if your stuff is coming in and it's higher in CO2, we're going to, we're going to basically tariff it or put a tax on it. Um, and what these guys have wanted to do for years is make the same thing applicable to this country, is they want to create this sort of carbon tax trading tariff mechanism that will ultimately end up obviously falling onto consumers because companies don't pay taxes, right? They pass on all of their costs to
Mhm.
consumers.
Right.
And so what this study does, they call it a benign study. Like, what's the harm in just doing a report and determining all of the carbon intensity of the products and goods and things that we make here in this country, so that we have a measure and we understand the sort of the carbon tag for our products versus Europe's. Well, the harm is that the way it works is if we start putting tariffs on carbon intensity products and goods coming into this country, and they're higher, then Europe's going to complain and they're going to go to the World Trade Organization and say the United States doesn't have the equivalent of a carbon tax that we have in Europe. And then the folks that are promoting this stuff are going to say, oh, okay, well, maybe we need to do that ourselves, right? So what we have been arguing for years is that taxing carbon is just bad policy, period, in any way, shape, or form. And these senators and some others have been trying to do this in various ways for years. You might remember the cap and trade discussion way back in the day. These are all like, fancy names that are trying to obfuscate the core issue here, which is taxing carbon. And if we tax carbon, we tax everything, right? So we have an income tax, we have corporate income taxes, we have all these taxes, and now they want to add a layer of taxing on our carbon, our energy,
No.
right? Which we produce more, we export as much, more than natural gas than anyone in the world. All of that would actually have real world impacts on consumers. You like low gas prices? This will raise gas prices.
Yeah.
You want to lower electricity prices? This will raise electricity prices. It'll impact hospitals, schools, people on fixed incomes, because we all pay for energy in whatever shape or form it is, and this will just be another layer of taxation on that. So we just basically wanted to alert Secretary Wright that these guys are trying to do this stuff. And what we've said to them is, we're happy to have the debate. The public is on our side. The polling shows nobody wants their energy taxed. Put it to the floor for a vote. You're supposed to be accountable to your voters.
Well,
Instead, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, well, let's take a quick break because I want to come back and I want to give you the time to discuss. It was inserted behind closed doors, so I want our listeners to understand how this even came to be, because this seems to be the way that they don't want to do it by the light of day. So let's take a quick break. You're listening to the Energy Mixx Radio Show. We'll be right back. And we're back. You're listening to the Energy Mixx Radio Show. My guest today is Tom Pyle, the president of American Energy Alliance. So, Tom, just to catch up our listeners, there were 37 you joined 37 other like-minded organizations to formally alert the Secretary of Energy, Secretary Wright, about concerns that you saw coming out of some committee language pertaining to potential carbon dioxide tax. Before the break, you discussed how if that's a bad idea because it's going to tax us on everything. And we as Americans, I think we all understand we're taxed on our income tax. We got a sales tax. We got a state tax. You just got taxes here, taxes there. It's the government just raising, raising. This was not quite the same. Explain to us how language was inserted in behind closed doors, because it's the exact opposite of what you said earlier, that you'd like to bring it out, all of 37 organizations and y'all, and bring it out to the light and have a discussion about it instead of inserting it behind closed doors. So, how did this happen and what was the purpose of it?
Yeah, so the proponents of this had introduced legislation in the last Congress to do just this and to put it into law, and it was so resoundingly rejected that they never even got it through committee. They never had a chance to get it on the floor of
Thank
the House of
goodness.
Representatives.
Yeah.
What they did instead was say, "Oh, I know what we'll do. We'll just do this super quietly. We'll sneak some language into one of these spending bills, and we'll, not let anybody know and not alert anybody about it." And a couple staffers on some of the committees were involved. And lo and behold, to their credit, they got it done. And when we exposed it, they bragged about it. Said, "Yeah, it was really hard to keep this quiet. We kept it. We were so excited about it, but we didn't really want to like tell anybody because if anybody found out about it, we probably would have lost."
I
Like
don't think
that's not how you legislate.
that's exactly. I was just going to say, as an American citizen, somebody that's never worked in oil and gas and has never worked for the federal government, as an American citizen, I'm appalled by those people. I honestly, and this is just Kim's rant, I feel like they're traitors and they should be charged with treason because this is not the four founders who created our country. I'm sorry, it was never created to be this. This is sneaky, it's backdoor, and when you're hurting the American people, potentially charging, I'm sorry, your job is just not that important. You should be an American first before you want to weasel something in. And that's just my opinion
A
that
hundred percent. And if the public wants something, or if the public doesn't want something, and senators or House members think it's important, make your case.
exactly.
Make
Otherwise,
your
it's
case.
shady and it's sleazy.
Yeah,
Sleazy.
absolutely. So we're focused on this. We've had some good conversations with some officials at the department. They recognize that they're going to, deal with this in some way, shape, or form. Not sure what exactly that's going to be now, but the point is that that's part of what we do at the American Energy Alliance is we bring these issues to light. We let people understand what their legislators are doing. We give them tools like the American Energy Scorecard so that they can look and see how their members vote on these issues and rank them and let them decide whether they're promoting policies that lead to better lives for them and their families by lowering costs, by allowing America to produce our energy, by allowing us to export it and things like that. And so that's part of our mission is to kind of be a watchdog for your listeners and folks around the country.
For the American people, and Tom, your website, and it's very readable. It's not complicated. I would highly encourage all listeners to go to your website and look and see because you're keeping everybody up to date on what's happening in DC. And I want to talk about, you mentioned basically in a big picture way what was going to happen if this went through. But I really want to drill down on that. But I want them to understand, our listeners, when you go to the voting polls and you're looking at things like how's the economy, how's your life, is it better or was it worse? If you're not sitting here paying attention to how important energy is, you need to, because if you're electing people who don't understand the basic concept of how important energy is, not just for the day to day and how much things cost in the grocery store at the pump, it's also a matter of national security. You really do need to get informed. You need to understand how important energy is to your life and to your children's lives. And this is why your organization and my show exist. But now, that being said, let's talk a little bit about, I want you to explain to our listeners the disproportionately way had this gone through, would have affected families on fixed incomes, workers, essential community
Yeah.
institutes like schools and hospitals. You know, thank goodness that you all stepped up because I want people to hear how it potentially might have affected them in the most negative ways. And why does it always seem like they go after the people that are indigent, the elderly, the people in hospitals, the children in our schools? Please
Well,
explain.
it's just the nature of energy, right? I mean, energy is a fixed cost in everybody's life. You drive a car, you live in a house, you need cooling, you need heating. Um, energy transportation is energy related. Goods and services go from the factory to the grocery store by truck or by rail or by car or by plane. These all they're all of the sort of one of the biggest input costs in all the goods and services out there is energy. And so like people who are on fixed incomes, people who don't make as much money pay a higher percentage of their budgets
Mhm.
on energy, right? They might have a smaller home, but they pay a bigger chunk of their paycheck to heat their home or to fill their tank. And in addition to that, they have other obligations, healthcare. They got to take care of their kids, school, things like that. And when you raise the cost of energy, you put an undue burden on households that make less money, right? I've done very well with my life. I'm very blessed. I thank God every day. I can afford, to pay a little bit more for that.
Mhm.
But that still costs me because, we can't take an extra vacation or whatever, right? So the point is, and schools and hospitals and everything runs on energy. And when you tax energy, when you deliberately try to curtail our ability to produce energy, when you have policies that are put in place that restrict our access to those resources or mandate more expensive forms of energy or more expensive cars or trucks, all of that gets passed down to us and we pay for that. And the folks who are less fortunate than you and I end up paying a lot more and have to make much harder choices with their family budget.
Absolutely. And Tom, there's also, it reminds me, that discussion you're saying reminds me of when we look at states like California, and then, in certain areas of like Pennsylvania, New York, where not in my backyard, I don't want to see refineries or any kind of energy source. It's kind of telling, but yet they will pay the most. And maybe they have more money, but the people who are having to live there, who are the workers, the cooks, the bartenders, the waitresses, the bus drivers, the Uber drivers, they really struggle to even live there because how expensive it is to live there when we look at these states. And basically, what I'm hearing you say is so picture if you don't live in those states for that reason, that exact reason, you want affordable, reliable energy. You're living in another state like Texas that it's pretty good. It's pretty well priced. Not if this comes on board, everyone's going to pay a
Yeah.
high price pertaining to this, and this is what we need to be mindful
Yeah,
of.
and to your point, I mean, just look at the migration numbers. There's outflow, like hundreds of thousands of people are leaving high energy, high tax states like New York, Massachusetts, California, and they're moving to affordable, reliable, low tax states like Texas and Florida. And, I feel bad for Virginia,
Yes.
right? They had this great governor, Glenn Youngkin, who was doing all this great stuff
Oh
there.
my goodness, Tom, hold on. I got to take a quick break, a hard break. I want to talk about that because he's scheduled. I think he's going to come on the show. Let's take a quick break.
Awesome.
Listening to the Energy Mix Radio Show. We'll be right back. And we're back. You're listening to the Energy Mix Radio Show. My guest today is Tom Pyle, the president of American Energy Alliance. Tom, right before the break, you hit a button with me like, oh, yes, 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 yes. So, a good friend of mine worked under Governor Limpkin in Virginia, and of course, he's out. And we were talking about how quickly that place is going to change almost overnight with the newly elected people in place. What is your vision of what's going to happen in Virginia due to the changing of somebody who had a strong energy policy and somebody that kind of lines up maybe with the Biden administration wants to flip that state around? What's going to happen there? What's the
Well,
problem?
I mean, there's already chatter about it, right? It's like kind of the joke is we need to take Northern Virginia and give it back to Washington, D.C. because that area of the state is so deep blue that it is sort of infecting the policies in Virginia. Governor Spanberger ran on a platform of affordability. She ran as a moderate. And the first thing she did before, like you said, before Governor Youngkin even ended up, packed his bags and moved out of the Virginia governor's mansion, she got Virginia back into what's called the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, which is yet another form of carbon tax. And Glenn Youngkin worked very diligently to get Virginia out of there. Just to give you an example, even Governor Shapiro in Pennsylvania
Right.
got Pennsylvania out of the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative because it was increasing energy costs in Pennsylvania. She put them back in. Her legislature put a host of new tax increases on the table for everything that you do, including grooming your dog, right? Taxes on cars and everything else. And they're not governing as moderates. She's nowhere near a moderate. And the idea that if you want to work towards affordability in Virginia and then you get Virginia back into a carbon tax, then that doesn't smell like affordability to me. You remember The Princess Bride when the guy kept saying inconceivable, and he said, "You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means." Same thing with affordability. These guys are doing the exact same policies that led to high energy prices and calling it affordability. It's mind-blowing to me, and I think the voters will see past it. She's on a course to be a very, very, very bad governor for the state of Virginia, and I think people will vote with their feet and move out of Virginia, just like they have done in New York and Massachusetts.
But you have to take it back to the voters. And this is why you exist, my show exists. If you don't really understand look at their history, look at their track record, look at what they're trying to do, and you don't understand how important energy is, those people are going to understand it. And what happened in Pennsylvania, let's look at that, Tom, and flip it. I went as part of the White House correspondent press corps to Pennsylvania for the announcement. It was the AI summit in which President
Oh yeah.
Trump attended, and he announced 90 with a B billion of investment in energy in that state. It's going to be a huge transformation. And it also showed that Governor Shapiro can work across the aisle for the betterment of his people to accept and embrace this is going to be good for jobs, high paying jobs, for the community, for my state. This is an investment to control the AI demand in the future. That's the kind of stuff that I would think Virginians would want to be a part of. Instead, they're going to get taxes kind of rammed up their
Mm.
booty. Sorry, squash that. They're going to get taxes kind put a Calvin, pick that up. They're going to get taxes kind of put upon them that they weren't probably expecting. And again, it goes back to, you can listen to the talk and the double talk, or you can listen and find that elected officials' past record, see where they're leaning, ask them what their policies are. We are in an election cycle right now. And understanding how important it is to know who are the elected officials that have the same ideas that you do when we talk about energy policy is kind of important, folks. And if you don't, then you can't blame me and Tom for when you get kind of the unintended consequences for
Yeah,
that.
I'll make it very easy for folks too. If you go on our website, we have what's called an American Energy Scorecard. And all
Okay.
you have to do is type in your zip code. It'll pull up your senators and your House member, and you can see how they voted on these issues. And they get ranked, and 100 to 0. 100 means you're an American energy champion, and 0 means you're a loser,
Yeah.
as Trump would
Don't
say.
vote for them.
And just see for yourselves. You don't have to be so involved. I mean, people have lives and
Right.
jobs and
You've done
families.
all the work for
You
them.
don't have to be so involved to nuance every issue. Just look at the scorecard. It's legitimate. It's based on what we analyze as votes to be those that lead to affordable and reliable energy, those that lead to allow us to produce more energy in this country or to bring manufacturing back to this country, versus policies that don't. And then we just say, you guys, now you have the record. Now you know where they stand on energy. You may have other issues that are important to you. I'm sure there are other organizations out there that do that similarly. But for, at least on the energy front, which is so critical to everybody, you'll know where your guys are as opposed to, walk the walk, not talk the talk. So
Absolutely. Tom, let's take a quick break. When we return, I want to talk about big picture vision, President Trump, and what your organization thinks about that. So we're going to switch gears just a little bit. You're listening to the Energy Mix Radio Show. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Energy Mix Radio Show. I'm your host, Kym Bolado, and today my guest is Tom Pyle, the president of American Energy Alliance. Tom, it's been I just love talking energy. I have the best job in the whole world. I love to talk about energy and I love to talk to smart people that get it, break it down for me so I sound more intelligent. And I didn't have to work in the energy industry. I want to switch gears and talk about President Trump, the big picture vision. You know, you all have described that this administration's agenda as unleashing Americans' energy, the goals, the core goals of President Trump's energy policy. Can you kind of describe it? Because in your website, again, folks, go to their website, it's all on there. And one of the articles I pulled up is there's over 250 different areas that President Trump in this one year has affected energy policy, over 250. I believe they're executive orders. Maybe you can clear that up for me. That's a lot of support towards the energy industry because they haven't had it in the previous administration. So what's going on here with President
yeah,
Trump?
it is mostly executive action, administrative action. It includes Congress. Congress was very, I give them credit, were very productive last year in the reconciliation bill, the tax bill.
Yeah.
We were successful in eliminating the EV mandates, all the things that were sort of forcing us to pay more for our cars and to buy cars that we didn't want to buy, and we're adding cost to the purchase of new vehicles. We also did a lot to eliminate the subsidies, the federal subsidies for wind and solar. The past administration had this policy of every single thing the federal government is going to do is going to be geared towards being hostile to oil, coal, natural gas, and be super friendly to wind and solar, right? I have nothing against wind or solar or electric vehicles. What I'm against is the government using the force of our federal government, using our tax dollars to punish oil and gas producers, to punish coal producers, to punish auto manufacturers, and submit them to their climate will, if you will. And what President Trump promised and what he has been delivering on is we are going to take energy seriously in this country. We have a whole of government approach to securing our supply chains for critical minerals so that
Okay.
we're not dependent on China. We have a whole of government approach to unleashing our American energy resources, which we have more than anyone else in the world. We're the number one producer of oil. We're the number one exporter of natural gas. Like I said, we have more coal underneath our lands than any other country in the world. And so his policies have reflected two things, two critical points. One is it will help us by lowering prices or helping to keep prices from getting even higher under bad policy. And two, and probably most importantly, our long-term national security interests. Energy has been a force for good for the world. American energy has helped rid Europe of its dependence on Russian gas, for example. It helps lift people out of poverty in Africa. Our exports are doing great things for other countries, and we have enough that, we have low prices here at home. What we don't have is a bipartisan approach to this issue. And what I mean by that is, for example, you looked at what happened in the Northeast in New England. We're burning oil and waste to keep the lights on we import our natural gas from Trinidad into Boston
Hmm.
because they won't build pipelines from Pennsylvania
Hmm.
to move our domestic natural gas across New York State to supply gas to New England. And those are state-based policies and state actions that are hurting their citizens.
As citizens, yeah. And I'm curious, let me just drill down on that too. In your opinion, what is the problem with these people in the pipeline in the way of like, so you want to pay more for energy, you want to be reliant on something when you could just do, a pipeline goes underground. So after the initial, you you build it underground, it's the safest way of transporting this. What is their problem?
Well, it started out as the green movement started out as we don't have enough. They tried to scare us with this myth of scarcity, right? We're the number one consumer of all these resources, but yet we don't have enough. And then the shale revolution came along and blew that narrative out of the water.
Yeah, because I was going to say, what? What does
So
a pipeline
then
do with that?
they shifted strategy and said, "Well, we want to keep it in the ground because it's bad for the environment, and we want to keep it in the
So
ground."
we should buy from Russia,
Exactly.
Iran, Saudi Arabia,
And by the way, we
from
do it
war?
cleaner and better here than anywhere else in the world. Our research organization, the Institute for Energy Research, just published a report called the Environmental Quality Index, and our research shows that by production volume levels, the United States is bar none the cleanest,
Mhm,
most environmentally friendly country in the world
mhm.
when it comes to oil and gas production and coal production. So if the Greens cared about the environment so much, they would actually be encouraging us to produce more in the United States.
Absolutely.
The blockading of the pipeline infrastructure is part of a larger effort, which is for us to live miserably. I just mean it literally. Like they don't want us to use this energy. That's why they're going after debt. They're going after data centers now, and they're going after the AI stuff and trying to blame AI. They just don't like progress. I don't know what it is in their genes that like have this knee-jerk reaction to progress. Wealth is health. The wealthier you are as a nation, the healthier you are as a nation.
Yes, absolutely. Energy poverty countries, their life expectancy is cut short. Sorry, folks, that's a fact. But it's the whole thing that who are these people? And do we need to follow the money? Because I can't believe anybody on the planet believes that it's better to keep it in the ground for the fact that we're going to have to depend on other countries for our energy. And that means if we just look historically in the past, we were always having to get ourselves involved in wars in the Middle East because we had an export ban here going on. And once that was lifted, you notice we're not really having to worry about wars anymore as much because we have our own energy here. And we're a lot more stable than we ever were. So are these people intentionally, maybe these are their children going to go fight these wars in the past, responsible in some different ways of this is what we're looking at, folks, with the ideology that you carry.
I want to expand on that, and then also get to my what I
What the hell are
also
these people maybe getting money from other countries to keep it in the
I
ground?
was gonna. That was my second point. The first point is that not only has the increase in oil production in this country and natural gas production um, done what you described, which is reduce the impact of events, world events like Iran or Hamas attacking Israel. In the past, that would have resulted in huge spikes in oil prices, which translates to huge spikes in gasoline prices.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen anymore. Why? Because we're the world's
We're
number one
stable.
producer.
Exactly. Tom, hold on. I have a hard break. Let's take a quick break. You're listening to the Energy Mix Radio Show. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Energy Mix Radio Show. My guest today is Tom Pyle, the president of American Energy Alliance. Tom, I'm going to give you back the floor because you got my blood pressure going with absolutely the setup. We're talking about people who I think are supposed to be American citizens, but they're green people that want to keep everything in the ground. And we basically just covered how when we have that kind of philosophy, we have to look and see why are we not really fighting wars anymore. When we had an export ban in place, we had to. Now that we can export ourselves, we have plenty of energy we're exploring here. That need isn't as much. So are these people in some ways responsible for trying to limit the United States of America and energy security? And are they trying to limit our ability to be less reliant on other countries for our energy needs? And we talked about maybe it's money from other countries that are coming in and flooding these groups to do this.
Yes, there's
Kind of
plenty of
anti-American to some degree.
There's
Please.
plenty of evidence. There's a couple things. One is a lot of people bankroll the green movement so that they could, um, you saw the ESG movement in the banking system and things like that. There was this whole craze to like finance green projects, right? And so a lot of the institutional investors gave heavily to these green organizations, and these green organizations worked very hard to try to, kneecap oil and gas production and things like that to make those investments more attractive, right? So there was a self-interest there in some of the donations, but there's also plenty of evidence out there to show that there are actors and characters overseas who are funding these organizations because they know that if we hamstring our energy security, we hamstring America. I'm talking about Chinese nationals. I'm talking about really, really wealthy people in Europe. I'm talking about Russian influence. This is not a game. Like, wars are fought and won with energy.
That's right.
And when we have it, things like Iran, they don't have as much leverage over their to achieve their objectives of disrupting the Middle East. Russia doesn't have as much leverage over Europe. Venezuela doesn't have as much. China was one of the biggest importers of Venezuelan crude oil before Maduro was captured. Now they don't have that access anymore, right? They were building an infrastructure in America, in the Americas, and that it's right in our backyard, right? Venezuela is really close to the United States,
It's in our hemisphere, absolutely.
and
Trying
we
to.
cannot have these actors building this infrastructure there. Iran was building drones and missiles in Venezuela. That kind of stuff is very, very risky, and I applaud President Trump for having the foresight to try to root out those types of activities in our hemisphere.
Yeah. I thought I read something maybe about 4 or 5 months ago that I think our government kind of took a stance that these NGOs that are these anti-oil and gas, we're going to start looking at potentially holding them accountable for all these obstructions that they just throw up in the way of court hearings and court, stopping all these different permitting projects and everything. And I sure would like to see that because it is about accountability. Um, your thoughts on the actions that matter the most. Okay, so on your amazing website that has so much information, Tom, you have an article in there that lists actually all of the different ways that President Trump from when he came into office has changed. And I counted, I think 260, somewhere in that ballpark, that you list them all. They can read them. It's a great opportunity to get up to speed on this. Out of that list, though, well, first of all, if you kind of know, tell us exactly how many there are. But what are the ones that you believe are going to have the greatest impact on energy affordability, the grid reliability? I mean, what are the ones that are standing out of the policies that he's been
Yeah,
changing?
you kind of have to lump them in categories. The first big category has been to undo all of the policies and actions that the previous administration imposed.
Right.
And that's a big part of the list. I mean, the first part is wiping the slate clean. And we have a lot of rules and regulations that the president has ordered and directed his agencies to clean up and fix. So that's one big one. The other one is encouraging more production, right? We had, to believe it or not, the previous administration offered the fewest lease sales for oil and gas of any president in history.
Right.
And we had to put in law the mandatory lease sales. Not that President Trump wasn't going to do lease sales, but that he wants to guard against future presidents who might have the same perspective as the previous administration. And so they were successful in putting in law the mandatory lease sale program, which is fantastic. He's working really hard to get Alaska back in the game. Alaska is vast in our energy resources and have been curtailed and stymied by federal and state policies. He's working diligently, we talked about coal, to grow our ability to generate electricity through natural gas, through coal, through nuclear. He's trying everything that he's doing is in a lot of ways trying to help blue states or democratic states save them from themselves in some ways by pushing these policies. Offshore leasing in California, which the governor there has opposed and continues to oppose. And so, just like the last administration took a whole of government approach to climate change,
Mhm.
this administration is taking a whole of government approach to unleashing our energy potential, lowering costs, trying to undo the harms that were created in past administrations, and allowing our energy producers and encouraging investment in this country. We've seen, you mentioned in one example, hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars of new investment, especially in energy infrastructure, is flowing into this country. It's not going to change things today or tomorrow, but in a year, 6 months from now, when those projects start coming online, it is going to add more fuel to the fire of what we've seen in the numbers as a growing economy. And a growing economy means more opportunities for us, for our listeners, and just a better life for everybody.
Well, Tom, last week I had on API and their discussion. They testified before Congress the importance of energy reform. And, if we look at what you described, we have a president that was anti, we have a president that is pro. And they keep using the federal government as best they can to get whatever they believe their thoughts are. Some are anti and some are for.
Yeah.
Really, the reality is, your website, what you do, what I do, trying to talk to the American people. Elections matter. And if we're electing Congress who refuses to look at energy reform, who refuses to look at things that your organizations are saying these are good for Americans, this is good energy solid policies. We need to stop letting presidents come in and try to do the job. We have to do this as Americans. Tell me what your thought is on energy reform before we close. I've got about a minute left.
Yeah, you're right. Presidents can only do so much. They only have a narrow bandwidth they can work. They can encourage changes within the federal government. They can fix, executive orders and things, but they only last as long as that presidency. Congress needs to get in the game. When Congress passes a law, it becomes the law of the land. And until they change that law, then that's what we live with. That's the rules that we live under. And I think the most important thing in the short run here is the energy reform it really involves permitting reform, giving
Permitting.
us the ability through Congress, through changes in law, to get our projects built faster, to get over this red tape, to get over these hurdles that for years and years and years have been stymieing our ability to build things in this country. And that'll be a good, important first step.
Yep. And so in closing, I just received literally a press release from your organization talking about the overdue of Americans EPA EPA endangered finding resend. And that's a perfect example as we close the show of what happened, how the Waters Over America, the Endangered Species Act, they all got weaponized, slowed everything down. And when we don't start looking at energy reform in all these different ways, these our leaders are forced to look at these kind of things, and of different policies, but they can be changed right back. Until Congress starts really looking at energy reform in a real way, we're going to continue to see this back and forth and up and down, and it's very disruptive. How can a company say that they have the ability to look at their 15-year growth with this government and their inability to understand what will happen between different presidents and how this can be gutted with one president? All their 15 years of work, permitting, trying to get through, they get sued. It's gridlock.
Yeah. And it means fewer jobs for us, fewer goods and products and services, more expensive. If the other side, yeah, listen, we live in a society where the debate is encouraged. People have ideas. The other side wants to have carbon taxes, want to restrict our energy production. That they're entitled to have that opinion. Let's vote. That's
Yeah.
what I say
And I
because the
told
American people are not stupid. They will
exactly.
they will punish those who do not act in their best interest at the ballot box. Let's not have this behind closed doors business through shadowy regulations from unelected bureaucrats and from members of Congress who are afraid to have votes on their issues. That's what it's all about. And that's why we're here, is to be part of that conversation. And it's great and it's fun. But the bottom line is that, you and I both, we do this because we want Americans to prosper and have a good life.
That's right. That's right. Tom, thank you so much for joining me. Very insightful interview today and conversation with you. And keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. You too.